Hello, and welcome to the C-Suite Chronicles podcast. We're bringing you the top voices in tech leadership. Leading a startup is often described as a balancing act. On any given day, you're dealing with multiple projects, deadlines, and tasks that demand your attention. It can be challenging to manage it all and maintain your sanity, especially when you're still in the early stages of getting your business off the ground. Here with me are Jonni Ressler, Principal and CEO of 1111 Solutions, an on-demand marketing agency, and Derrick Morton, CEO of the gaming company FlowPlay, which operates virtual community games such as Casino World and Vegas World. Both are seasoned founders who have experienced the ups and downs of starting a business from the ground up, and they're here to share stories and advice on balancing competing priorities and staying sane in startup mode. Before we jump in, could you start briefly by introducing yourselves and talking a bit about your backgrounds? Jonni, why don't you go first?
Sure. My name is Jonni Ressler. I am the CEO and founder of 1111 Solutions. I founded the company in May of 2016, so we're coming up on 7 years. My background is I've been in high-tech sales and marketing for about 27 years, so just don't do the math on that. And now I run this consulting firm. So we have consultants that work at some of the top technology companies on the West Coast. Some are in long-term engagements, so they're 2, 3, 4 years, and others do very short-term engagements. So that's a peek at what I do.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Derrick Morton. I'm the CEO of FlowPlay. I've been making video games for about 30 years. I founded FlowPlay 15 years ago. We're 70 people working in downtown Seattle. I have a great partner named Doug Pearson, who's the CTO and has been my partner for 15 years as well.
We're talking today about being leader of a startup and how to balance competing priorities. And there's all these perceptions about working in a startup environment. It can both be exhilarating and rewarding. It can also be pretty grueling. It's often depicted as long hours and like being on a roller coaster. There's lots of highs, there's lots of lows. And some people even say it can be kind of lonely. People outside of the entrepreneurial space, whether it be your friends or family or other people, they might not understand what you're going through. So I wanted to start out by talking about, if you're the leader of a startup and it's early days, and you're basically kind of the go-to person for everything, payroll, product, finance, all these things, because you haven't either hired a team yet, or maybe you have a team in place, but the roles haven't been clearly defined. How do you manage all these priorities? How do you strike a balance and maintain your sanity? Is it even possible?
Well, I think it's, in my case, finding a good partner helped a lot. I think it's really hard as an entrepreneur to be the sole leader of the company, to be the sole entrepreneur. It really helps if you have someone who's complementary to you to be your partner in the business. If you're a business person, having a tech person. If you're a tech person, having a business or marketing or salesperson as your partner, because I think it's extremely difficult to take all the. I can't imagine having done what we've done all alone without a strong partner on my side.
And I'm going to echo Derrick a little bit. Been at it about half the time Derrick has. And I think whether it's a partner or it's a team, I think it's really important to be very honest with yourself about your deficits. So I'm very clear on some of the things I'm not good at. So early on, I was really keen to outsource things like HR. I am not a lawyer, so I have outsourced things like legal compliance, contracts. So where can I leverage other people's expertise and know where my gaps are? And I do not have a partner, so I am the sole owner, but I do have a leadership team. And very clearly, I identified, oh gosh, I need a really good CFO who can help me understand the risks with building this business, help us forecast those kinds of things. And then I also knew I needed administrative support. Like I don't know how to do things like partition our computers or make sure that we've got people the right level of access through Office 365, things like that. So very early, I think every entrepreneur goes into it for different reasons, but have a very honest view about the things that you're not good at. And if you're not sure, ask your trusted advisors, because they're very clear. The people who have worked with you, the people who have managed you, they know where your blind spots are. So making sure that you either have that as a partner, as a team, as something you can outsource either temporarily or ongoing. I just don't think you can be successful as a solopreneur without some of that support.
One other technique I've used in the past, not so much now that I have a big team supporting me, but in the early days, I would chop up the work and compartmentalize it. So I would have a Tuesday marketing day where I really focus on one thing on that day and focus on marketing. Next day is finance. Maybe the next day is meeting with the team to find out where we are on the production schedule. But I think it's very hard to do everything all at once. And it's much easier if you just break it down into its pieces and try and focus on specific things over your day and really schedule it. It's in your schedule that right now I'm working on marketing right now.
Yeah. And I think Derrick's also identified you have to decide what the rhythm of business is for your particular business. So perhaps you don't have meetings on Mondays because that's a day that you're invoicing, or that's a day that your engineers are getting together and you're doing stand-ups. So you really need to think through, what am I doing? Am I building something? Am I offering something? And what is the specific rhythm of business? And try and stick to that for enough time that you can test drive it. Because that's the other thing. There's so many distractions. You start with we have our team meeting, and then we do the thing, and then a big client calls or something goes wrong and everything gets off kilter. You got to test drive that model, and then you can tweak your rhythm of business. But he really identified having clear expectations, whether it's daily, hourly. What does your month look like? What does your business look like? Then go try it. And then don't be afraid to tweak it. I do think we often get attached to, this is the way we do it, or this is the way we've done it for 5 years, and really pausing and going, is that effective? Is it really useful? Or am I creating chaos? Or are we having a meeting for no reason? That kind of thing.
Yeah, from the beginning, we were a Monday, Wednesday, Friday company with Tuesdays and Thursdays work from home. And it started because my CTO and partner, he was like, I need 2 days a week where I just write code. Otherwise, we're never going to get it done. But it really worked for the rest of the company too. Everybody else had 2 days a week where there were no meetings, and really just focus on, if you're an artist, you're focused on getting your artwork done. If you're a marketer, you're working on your marketing plans, but really 2 days a week just to focus, and 3 days a week where you're interacting with the rest of the group seemed to work for us. May not work for everybody. Every company's different, but for us, it was the perfect rhythm, as you put it.
And Robin, you asked about keeping your sanity. I think all the questions and things we'll be discussing are about that. And so this is just one tactical execution to remain sane. And the truth is, you do have to have a certain capacity and a certain appetite for chaos, because you have made the decision to invent something, to innovate, to do something different. You see a market opportunity and you decide to do it. So you're making it up, you're improvising, and you're adjusting as you go, which that's a different kind of personality type, right? So you mentioned someone from the outside. I have many colleagues who are like, absolutely no way would I ever start my own company, right? Because that would make me crazy, is what you hear. Or how do you stay sane? I think folks who tend to take on the challenge of a startup or go work at a startup, they really relish creating meaning and something out of that chaos. Looking at something that can look really unstructured and really like unmanageable to some folks looks like an opportunity. So some of that is just language and how we view challenges and flipping them into opportunities. I know we all hate that, but looking at everything that comes up and goes, okay, this is an opportunity. It is a specific mindset. And again, going all the way back to the beginning, if you're sitting at home and thinking, I want to start a business, I'm going to do a thing, think about your appetite for risk, your appetite for innovation, your appetite for improvising, because that is required. And on a Friday, Saturday, I don't usually feel like, I'm going crazy. Yes, there's a very long to-do list. It will not at all ever get done. And I relish the Monday because it's another opportunity to sort of dig in. And my guess is Derrick and his partner probably feel very similarly.
Now, that's a great observation. I think it's a really good segue kind of into our next question, which is, are there aspects of a business or an entrepreneur's personal life that they should absolutely prioritize from the get-go to help them create some semblance of sanity in this chaos, as you mentioned? Mindset sounds to be one for sure. And really, I think know thyself.
Well, for me, what keeps me sane is knowing I have runway. So I think the number one job you have as the founder, if you're in the business role, is you're in charge of making sure there's money in the bank and that you're making payroll. And
Yeah.
if you can accomplish that and you have runway, the stress of you and anybody close to you and anybody that knows you and everybody that's working with you will go way down.
Yeah.
Because that's your number one role. So that's a priority for me. Secondly, for me is customers. Like knowing exactly who your customers are, what they want, and what you can provide. Are you providing what they want? You have to be the expert in that. And if you know that, I think that takes the stress level down too.
And I think I would camp onto that too. And knowing who your customers are not. I think it's really tempting when you start a business, right? You want to say yes to everybody and you want everybody to love you and everyone to want your stuff or services. And the truth is, I think over time you realize you're not for everybody. So the faster you can delineate who your ideal customer is. And some of that is just experience. And some of that is, you know it when you see it, right? But the folks that pay their bills on time, the people who really value the product or service that you're creating. Because I think in a desire to go all the way back to Derrick, to make payroll, right? You need revenue. So there's that temptation to say yes, yes, yes. And most new businesses will. You're going to say yes to the wrong customer when you start out. And maybe Derrick never has. I certainly have. And then you learn from that and like, okay, that actually is not the profile of the ideal customer. So the closer you can get to that ideal customer, ideal client, ideal partner, ideal employee, when you get real clear about that, it makes it so much easier. And then on the personal side, trust the people around you who love you and see you and know you, who are like 20-second timeout, right? When they see the working at 7:00 on a Saturday night, when they see, oh gosh, your shoulders up at your ears, trust the people that are your trusted advisors in business and in your personal life. And it's really hard because when you're first starting, you're like, I got to grind, I got to do the thing. And you can't, that old dumb analogy of putting the oxygen on yourself before the kids. I mean, it's true. And we all hate to hear it because people who found companies tend to be like, let's get her done. I want to motivate people. I want to get going. But remembering whatever I do is being modeled for my leadership team, for my managers, for my employees, and I want them to have a life. So I have to too. So man, it's a tricky balance, right? That little circle. I got to pay the people. How do I pay the people? I got to hustle. So figuring out how do you manage that self-care, which I know these days feels very woo-woo-y. Self-care is like, to me, it's almost like a sacred selfishness. I got to pause. I got to sleep. I got to eat. I got to drink the water. I got to exercise some because I cannot show up and be a good leader unless I do that. And it feels really selfish in the moment. So that was a lot of words to how do I do it in my personal life? And then what do you need to do? And I have to say the number one thing Derrick nailed, you have to get payroll under control before you can grow, before you can innovate, before you can do anything. You need to know that that is safely handled.
I go so far as when you're talking about personal life and balance, I go so far as I have a 45 minutes blocked out for Stairmaster in the morning. So like
Nice.
This is my Stairmaster time. So there's no meetings. And in some ways it actually gets me on the Stairmaster more easily just because, it's on my calendar. I do whatever's on my calendar. Okay, it's time for that. And I also blocked out the time for time with my wife and time with my kids. So from 6 to 8:30, that's their time. I'm back to work after 8:30.
Totally.
But from 6 to 8:30 is literally on the calendar, like family time.
Yeah. I also think forecasting for your friends and family is important. If you're coming up on, say, a product launch, or you're coming up on a serious round of investing or something like that. What I learned early on is my family really isn't in my office every day. They're not aware of all the pressures necessarily. And so for me to disappear on a Saturday or have to fly somewhere unexpectedly, the more you can let people know what's going on ahead of just forecasting, like, hey, October is going to be rough. This is what's happening and this is why, or this is what I think I'm going to need to be doing in January, because people just want to understand so they can be emotionally invested. It feels a little bit like abandonment. Everybody's going to the volleyball game or the whatever. And you're like, I gotta sit down and do 200 emails. It doesn't connect for people. So I think all of us, if you can give a heads up to folks, it makes all the difference. and trading that time off. Like you said, like, I am going to be in it. I will be 100%. I'm around for dinner. I will make the dinner. I'm showing up, and I'm going to need some flexibility because I got to do this thing. The way I view it, if someone decides, if you're in a committed relationship, or even if you have a roommate, if you have decided to found a company and lead a company, so have the people who live with you. And so even though they're not under the same stress, even though they don't have all the knowledge, and they don't want to, they're a great sounding board, but they don't want to know the ins and outs of what happened in the team meeting, right? No one likes to feel forgotten, and it's rarely intentional, and it just goes a really long way to pull people in.
Those sounds great. And I think too, I mean, it sounds like you're both kind of speaking from experience. Mental health is such a huge aspect of entrepreneurship. Are there other tips, pieces of advice, personal war stories that you want to share with regard to that might be helpful to others who are, kind of in the beginning of their journey and kind of walking in those shoes?
Do you think there's a couple things? I think we've got to really get rid of the myth, especially in technology, that we got it all together, that, it's win-win-win, that it's, no pain, no gain, that whole thing. I think we're done with that. I think talking about our personal health, our physical health, our mental health, and that also ties into, as a founder, I think what's huge, finding other people who have, if they're not competitors, they at least know what you do, what you're trying to do. And you can really talk to them honestly, like, wow, I really screwed that up. Like, that was a huge loss. I would have done that very differently. I just lost $40,000 making that decision. Right. And I think it's really important because we celebrate the wins. I think we're really good at that. But the learning comes from the failures, the losses, and having people that you trust. And that's part of mental health too, because you can feel really isolated and alone, and it's all on your shoulders. And then if there is a failure, and there will be a failure if you're going to found a company. So when you have those failures, how do you move through, knowing the only way through is to go through, right? But your mental health takes a toll. I don't know, Derrick, but yeah, have I lost sleep? For sure. Have I taken on things that really weren't mine to take on? Having to learn the difference as a business leader between caretaking and taking good care of my people. I think some of that possibly is because I'm a woman, who knows, but taking things on that really are not my responsibility. So for me, having a therapist who's like, yeah, that's not your job, right, has been really, really helpful. So I'd encourage that. Talk about it. There's no shame in it. It's just like going to the gym, only it's your problem solving, it's your mental health, it's your capacity, it's your boundaries and bandwidth. Like, how do you do that? Because the truth is, in technology, we don't have a ton of good examples. So we got to make it up if you're starting your own company.
You mentioned sleep. I think sleep's one thing that people think that they can go without. And sometimes, they think they're getting more done, but there's a diminishing return to that. I try to get at least 7 hours because I'm just not 100% without it.
Yep.
And people think that they're going to get more done by staying up till 2 a.m. and then getting up at 6 and going to work. You're really not getting that much more done. You're going to be much more productive and much more there for everybody you need to be there for if you actually get the sleep that you need.
I could not agree more.
I would say also, just like you, Joni, I had never been to therapy in my life, and I'm not a young guy until COVID. And so the combination really of being worried about me, my family, and my team and my company, right?
That's
so
right.
I've got 70 people who are suddenly like, wow, what does this mean that we're not going to the office anymore? What's going to happen with me and my company? So yeah, I cut it off after about 18 months, but because I kind of got through a lot of stuff and things settled down, right? But that was the first time that in my life that I'd ever felt like, well, I really need a third party to talk to walk me through this.
Yeah, me too.
And people should.
Yeah. And something to consider as you look at your benefits package, right? I hadn't really thought, the classic, like, of course, we've got to have medical, we've got to have dental, we got to look at 401k as you get the cash flow to do those things. I hadn't really thought about what kind of mental health coverage do we have? Can they do online? Oh, great. That's covered. Do we need to increase that? Are the things we need to think about with leaves of absence? I'm not saying everybody founder out of the gate needs to be thinking about it, but I think there's something like we tend to go health benefits, and we all sort of know what that bucket looks like. I wasn't considering that people need mental health support in the way that they do. I'm super grateful that our medical plan does that, but I didn't know. I had to dig in and go, oh, okay, this is a cool benefit. So thinking about that as you begin to add those services, as your company grows, or if you outsource that, perhaps you leverage places like WTIA to get things like that, making sure that they actually support that in the same way that there really are, whether it's online, in person, how do they figure that stuff out?
Yeah, I literally had a conversation about this a few weeks ago because we're in our renewal period right now. And so we were looking at, obviously every year you get an increase. Yep. And so we're looking at an increase and measuring that against other plans we might go into. And my advisor said, well, there's this other plan, it's cheaper, but a few of your people might have to change mental health providers. I was like, well, that's a non-starter.
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
It's one thing to change your, your foot specialist, your mental health provider. I think that's a difficult one to ask people to change.
That's right. But that isn't all founders. And I do think it's really important. Some might say, save the pennies, right? And so that also ties me back to, I think both Derrick and I, although limited exposure, putting your people first. A lot of people say that, but how do you walk that out? So you might not, which will also help you sleep and not feel as stressed. So if you're a 3-person company, your health benefits may not be that awesome at first. So what can you do for them? Is there the potential that you give them a stipend so they have the opportunity to buy something at a more affordable rate? Can you go through a brokerage? As you grow, what's your commitment to your employees, to your partners, to your customers? Because I do think, so many people say people first, but when you feel connected, when you have a relationship, I say no a lot. I can't no, I'm not doing 7 weeks of paid vacation. We're not doing that. Okay. But I can say yes to other things. And my CFO says this all the time. She's brilliant. When you say no clearly, right? Not waffling, you're clear. It actually gives your yes a lot more power. So as you're growing your company, you're going to have a wish list of all the cool things you want to do, right? We want to do this for our employees, and we want this, and we want to pay this much. So being clear about where you are in your business, what you can afford, what you can do, what has to get outsourced, but that you have a plan and your intention is to get to something. And then if you can't get there because the revenue is not there, like that communication loop is really important. I think one place founders and growing companies, particularly in tech space, fail is it's all about over-promising, right? Big stock benefits and the payout, and then we'll go public and we'll do the thing and it'll be exciting. And so then this distrust is already in the marketplace with new employees, with people you partner with. And so I tend to be the opposite. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. So I'm going to actually say what I can do today and what I'm hoping to do in 6 months or a year, and then we'll revisit it. And I own it if we can't. I'm going to be real clear. I don't match 401k today. I would love to be there. I'm not there. I want to be there. I'm not there. And I've been very clear with them of what it's going to take, what the revenue needs to be, what the customer base needs to look like, because that's the next thing to check off on all the goals I had 6.5, 7 years ago. So I think it's really important because in the effort we want the best talent, we want to be the cool place to work, we want all this stuff. And so often we get into a spot of saying really cool things we can't deliver on, which then is going to make sure you can't sleep, you feel crazy, additional stress, etc.
I think that's fantastic. So I guess anything else you wanted to add at this point? Any last insights, tips, advice?
I think, as Ross said, don't be afraid to pivot. I think people start companies because they're very excited about their thing, their service, their product, whatever it is. And sometimes the market doesn't have an appetite, or it does for a certain amount of time. So being realistic about what you can achieve, what you can do, and how many people are serial entrepreneurs. You see that over and over, where first they did this thing and then they were done with that, and then they go on to another thing. And so I think being open to pivoting and evolving as a business leader is really important. I think I've seen a lot of colleagues really fail when they've clutched that, like, this is the idea and we're not changing the idea and we're never, ever going to give up on that. and it just won't work in technology. So that's the first big thing is don't be afraid to change your trajectory as the market changes, as your people change, as you change. I mean, I used to feel really guilty if I would say something like at an all hands, we're going to do this. And then 12 months later, I'm like, I changed my mind. I don't want to do that anymore. Either I don't want to, the market's changing, I'm not getting what I need. And I used to feel like that was flighty or not clear. And now I sort of reserve the right to, we're going to adjust, we're going to change. We're always going to be responding and reacting. And so I think helping people through that, because especially if you're going to work in high tech, you need to be really comfortable that the only thing that is consistent is that it's always changing. So I think I would say that to any founder, you have a great idea, you start a thing, and don't be afraid to pivot. And I can guarantee you the path to success is going to look very different than what you originally thought when you went and got that LLC or filed your EIN or got your trademark. I guarantee you it will not look how you originally thought. So that flexibility is just very, very important.
I agree. I think the other thing I think that people overlook is too many people are fixated on the outcome. They're like, oh, we're gonna sell the company someday. And if you're always just fixated on the outcome, you're not enjoying this whole ride you're on. And so I would encourage people to sort of like, enjoy the day to day, because it's a grind. You might as well have fun with it, and not be so focused on the eventual outcome. The possibilities for outcome are endless. There are a million different ways things can go. But make the best of every day that you've got with your team, with your product, with your company, and just make the best of it. Not be so focused on like, oh my God, if we don't go public, I won't be satisfied.
Yeah. Know who you, and it goes back to Robin, what you said, know yourself. If, know who you are, and then you can sit in that and be like, I have people all the time say, what is the 5-year plan? And I said, okay, I can give you the loose forecast, but what I can tell you very clearly is how we're going to show up day to day, what we're doing in the next 6 months, what the quality of our relationship with our employers and the people we serve is going to be. That's clear to me. And that's never wavered. And I think that's unsettling for some folks. And so a lot of people who are super goal oriented, they don't want to do that. So again, going all the way back to what kind of folks thrive in a startup, in an entrepreneurial setting, they got to be pretty comfortable with the, I don't know, but I'm committed to figuring it out. I'm in this, I'm not going anywhere. I don't exactly know what this is going to look like, and it might be messy, but let's do it together and be super present. I don't want to look back on the last 6 years and say, I have no idea where that went. Today's result looks different than I thought it was going to look 6 months ago, so therefore I failed. That's not what it's about. So really going back to knowing who you are and knowing thyself, this idea of like, I'm going to grind, I'm going to work really hard because there's the 20 million payoff because I sell my company. It's a lot to ask of yourself physically, personally, professionally. If really it's just about money, fame, whatever, most of the people that I see that are very successful in this arena, it actually isn't about that. Do some get quite lucky or they have really great, business trajectory? Absolutely. But most people don't sign up to found a company and lead a company unless they really, really care about what they're doing in those relationships.
I read about something really interesting that another company was doing that I want to try soon. They actually, when they cancel a game or a project, they have a cake made and they bring the cake in and they actually have a party to celebrate this failure, or what would normally be a failure, but they celebrate, hey, you know what? It just didn't work out. This thing we were trying to accomplish together, we worked really hard. We put in a lot of effort. We really wanted it to happen, but it just didn't happen. And I think that it really sparked this idea of like, wow, it gives everybody closure. Like, okay, now that's behind us. We had this event and now we're not going to talk about this failure anymore. And we sort of celebrated together and we can laugh about it. We can make a joke about that thing that probably was a little bit painful.
Yeah. I mean, and let's think about it, right? Any baseball fans here? A 300 batting average, right? That's considered amazing. Right. Like you are all-star level. Okay. How many times does that mean at bat you didn't hit the ball? Right. It's 7 out of 10, right? So I think you just nailed something I've talked to some of the other leaders at WTIA about. We are in a culture here in Western United States in the tech industry we really love to celebrate what we're doing well. And we really love to celebrate when we've hit milestones and wins. That's what we're rewarded for in this space and in our culture. And so I don't know. I just think that we don't spend very much time talking about our failures, and particularly as owners and founders with each other. That's the stuff where I think the meat is the stuff of like, don't forget to sleep. Don't forget to get support from people. What we're talking about are the things that maybe we didn't do so well. And if other people could skip that or incorporate that earlier on, there's a faster path to peace and success. I think that's it.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that's how you learn, right? If you don't
Right.
go back and review those failures and say, okay, where did I turn wrong? Or what did I do here? Or what happened? Then you're doomed to repeat the same mistake, really.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, Derrick, any last words, tips, insights, advice?
You know, what I would say is it goes back to something that Joni said earlier, is that this is very difficult to do, and there's a lot of weight on your shoulders, but it really helps if you don't look at this as just you. If it's all about, if it's really it's a team sport, entrepreneurism. I'm super open with my team. They get to see the board deck. Maybe I have to delete a couple things here and there that may relate to them, but after every board meeting, they get to see what we talked about. They have visibility into the financials. They know if we had a rough month. They know if we had a good month. So there should be no secrets when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I think it's almost like going to therapy, doing this with your team. If you're talking about, everything that's worrying you with your entire team, then that's a form of therapy in itself. So I would encourage everybody to sort of practice that level of visibility with everybody they're working with, both for because they deserve to know what's happening at the innermost level of the company for the most part. And for you as a leader, it really helps you to sort of, feel like you're not in this alone, that this is really a team effort.